Hey everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Daily Shorts. Thomas here, your host as always. Yes, I know it's been a while since I've uploaded, and I know this isn't the new book review you've been patiently waiting for. Don't worry, it's waiting in the wings. But for now, I wanted to review some short fiction, specifically from current print magazines. And so, with one exception, all the stories in this episode are from the issues of Asimov's and fantasy and science fiction that are on the racks right now, as of this upload. So, let's have a look at what I read, starting with 3 of the Asimov stories. Alan Steele's Starship Mountain is an enjoyable novella that cobbles together both its plot and its world building from a bunch of off-the-shelf parts, and yet manages to turn in something worth your while all the same. It's a hard-boiled detective story set in a human colony on a distant world that has, like so many such colonies in science fiction, forgotten its own origins and reverted to a pre-spacefaring civilization, in this case, one that very conveniently happens to resemble flintlock fantasy. Yes, I know, you have to be very generous with your suspension of disbelief for this sort of thing. I have always wondered how it is that a lost colony on another world, with little or no surviving record of humanity's past on Earth, still manages to recreate a culture and technology like muskets, so closely resembling cultures from the real past. I guess it's just convenient for authors that way. Still, it's a tribute to Alan Steele's storytelling skills, which should be well known to any fans of the Coyote series who are watching this, that the story and the world in which it is set is so vividly compelling and real. Citizen Jeremy Crow is a private investigator, or as he actually calls himself, a dick, working in the seedier neighborhood of the city of Landensite, on an island on the world of Toss Ceti, where humans have been granted their space to live among the rather cranky natives. Now, Crow is hired by a member of the aristocracy to locate his willful, missing daughter, Pilot Fletcher, who vanished of her own accord in advance of the usual arranged marriage. With the young lady's fiancé in tow, who isn't a half-bad guy, really, Crow's search leads him to a discovery that comes as no surprise to us, but a very big surprise to him. Now, Starship Mountain is apparently part of an upcoming novel of Steele's, and so the fact that the story itself doesn't really go anywhere you don't expect it to isn't as much of a problem as it might be, because it's clear that what happens here is only opening the door to bigger and more interesting mysteries to come. And so it's a book that I'm looking forward to. And I can confidently recommend this story, which is on the short end for a novella, as a taster. Next, I checked out Suzanne Palmer's short story, Stones in the Water, Cottage on the Mountain. Now, this is a striking alternate universe tale in which we meet the same woman hiking through a forest, past a deserted cottage where a different apocalyptic scenario has befallen the world. In one, humanity is being decimated by a plague. Another is rampant overgrowth of toxic vegetation. Another is straight-up nuclear Armageddon. Yet another involves self-replicating killer robots. Now, in each scenario, there are common factors. She has the same ex-boyfriend, there's a stray dog, she leaves behind origami animals. And they all end tragically, except for the last one, leading me to presume that the theme here is that in our real day-to-day lives, whatever's happening to us, things could always be worse. Yeah, okay, I get it. But sweet loving Jesus, this story is some bleak and depressing business, with the final happy ending scenario doing little to uplift all of the ugliness that we have endured leading up to it. It's exceedingly well written, which you might expect from the author of The Secret Life of Bots, one of this year's Hugo nominees, but I suppose I can only recommend it if you're on some kind of masochistic streak. I needed a real pick-me-up after all of that unhappy shit, so I jumped right into Lieutenant Tightass. Ooh, that sounded bad. A novelette by the prolific Christine Catherine Roosh, set in her Diving into the Wreck universe, a series of space operas about a deep space search and rescue fleet. Now, she has published, I think, 3 novels and several short works in the Diving series, but this one can be read as a complete standalone. You don't need any familiarity with anything that's come before, and it's a most enjoyable procedural. Lieutenant Jonathan Cooper is a newly commissioned officer aboard the Arama, which has been dispatched to locate and rescue a vessel that has entered fold space, which is how ships travel interstellar distances, and has never come back out. Now at first, Cooper, who is very much a no-nonsense, by-the-book kind of guy, hence his nickname, is really unimpressed with the way the Arama is run, which feels slapdash and careless about following proper procedure to the point of unprofessionalism. But Cooper soon learns what the realities of the job entail and the intensely terrifying risks involved in entering fold space itself. And as he develops a greater respect for the captain and crew, he discovers a few things about his own limitations as well. There's a really creepy undercurrent of suspense to the rescue mission, and some nice character interaction that makes this totally worthwhile for anyone who likes stories about spaceship crews. Shifting over to F and SF, I read 3 really nice stories, starting with Broken Wings by William Ledbetter. Now, Ledbetter won the Nebula last year for his novelette The Long Fall Up, which also appeared in F and SF. He was also at ArmadilloCon 40 last weekend, and I was on one panel with him, yeah. He's a smart and articulate guy. Broken Wings is a terrific little story set on the Martian moon of Deimos that combines suspense, a love story, and some clever inspiration from the Beatles. Marcy is a disabled woman working as a dispatcher who has been engaged in a kind of online flirtation with Bernard, a deep space miner whom she has never actually met. Now, one day, Bernard flies in, requesting a private berth at the station, which he cannot actually afford, and it turns out he has recovered something very unusual. Something that certain criminal elements might be willing to do whatever it takes to get their piratical little hands on. The story is basically Marcy's, and I admired how it's never overplayed, the way she manages to take charge of a situation without allowing her disability to inhibit her. And I just loved the way she discovers by accident just how Bernard feels about her. Yes, the title comes from the Beatles song Blackbird, and it resonates poignantly with the story's themes. You know, the more I think about this one, the more it's a favorite. I'm going to reread it a few times. Mars's Other Moon gets a little love in The Phobos Experience by Mary Robinette Kowal. Now, this is another one of Mary's alternate history Mars adventures, and if you like the others, you'll probably like this one well enough, although maybe not enough to consider it a favorite. It involves a trio of astronauts led by Lieutenant Darlene Ridica, who are dispatched to Phobos to investigate an extensive cave system, the existence of which the government is keeping secret. I won't get into what they discover, but the story is a taut and entertaining read, though I have to say I'm a little torn on Darlene as a heroine. She suffers very bad vertigo, which more than once potentially endangers her companions, but she keeps the condition secret all throughout the story, which I think makes her one of those characters who is morally compromised, but not necessarily in a sympathetic way. But the centerpiece of this issue, like literal centerpiece because it takes up the whole middle third of the magazine, is the novella Freezing Rain, A Chance of Falling by Canadian author L.X. Beckett. It's set in a disturbingly prescient near future where social capital is a very literal thing. People operate under a stroke economy where, to put it simply, imagine if the number of likes you get on social media were really currency, like determining not just your popularity, but your actual career path, your choice of living and shopping arrangements, and losing enough of them could make you an actual pariah in society. Yeah, it's a bit Black Mirror, and it is shockingly very much like something China is actually rolling out right now. But I like this take on the idea because Beckett filters the premise through the sensibilities of not only new writers working in near-future SF like Cory Doctorow and Annalee Newitz, but their use of language and jargon gives their writing an edge that echoes the original cyberpunks like Gibson and Sterling when they were young and scrappy, right? I mean, I completely love Beckett simply for creating the word art storm. Woodrow is an aspiring Toronto musician working as a journalist. When he publishes an exposé of a big-time pop diva whose biggest hits are all pretty much plagiarized, she attempts suicide in his apartment, and her outraged fan base utterly tanks Dro's social ranking. Though his editor still believes in him, Dro is pretty much reduced to shoveling snow off sidewalks, until he's rescued by an enigmatic and wealthy mystery woman named Tala. It turns out Tala is a performance artist, and she becomes his benefactor in a plan to redeem himself by exposing a fake chemotherapy clinic, baiting him with the promise of smart drugs to help boost his musical output. But Tala's reputation is much too secretive, especially in a social media-obsessed world, and it looks like the art she creates pushes the boundaries of actual danger a little too closely. You're going to need to give this one time to breathe. The narrative unfolds more like a novel than a novella, but this gives Beckett the opportunity to create a full sense of immersion in this fascinating high-tech world. And despite a suspense plot, the story is really character-driven, and it's essentially all about how Dro finds himself faced with the choice between risking his life for real simply to regain this social status required by society, or discovering the strength to walk away from it all and follow his true passion. Now, if the kind of near-future SF that leaves grit under your fingernails is the kind of thing you're up for, you won't want to miss this. Finally, here's a story I only checked out by pure chance because the author contacted me directly, and so I guess that's one of the benefits of doing this series. You might make a nice random discovery. The story is The Glow, and it appears in the August issue of a brand new online magazine called Vulture Bones, dedicated to speculative fiction by transgender and non-binary authors. The author is Caleb Bash, and I want to thank them for reaching out. This is a sweet little tale about 4 friends who are glows. Now, their bodies emit a form of visible light, like an aura, I suppose. In terms of plot, there isn't much of one, other than that we are presented with these characters, in particular Savvy and Paraden, who end up sharing some confidences during an evening when Savvy is recovering from a minor injury sustained on a hike. Now, both Savvy and Paraden are escapees from what sounds like a deeply dystopian civilization called the Underground, where there is harsh bigotry towards glows. Now, after their escape, Savvy was taken in by a couple, Kaz and Mimo. The bonds of friendship here are extremely appealing, and while you could criticize it as a story, because if anything it feels more like an extended scene taken out of a larger story than a story in itself, there was something very comforting in reading about these characters who have found a place to fit in and be accepted on their own terms. As an example of SF, there's a lot of missing information in the world building. For one thing, the author mentions both the underground and then a city, and it wasn't 100% clear to me if those were the same place. Don't think so. Also, it's implied that there is something very locked off and fascistic about the underground, mainly because Savvy had to escape from it in the first place. So it seems like there should be a looming threat there that isn't addressed. But all that notwithstanding, I still got a really warm feeling reading this, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this magazine develops. And there you have it. On balance, I'd say this month F&SF is probably the better print magazine buy, although I do love that retro-looking robot on the Asimov's cover. It's nice. Now, next time on Daily Shorts, I think I will check out stories from some recent anthologies, since I have gotten some in Mailbag Monday that a lot of you have taken an interest in, such as Ride the Star Winds and a couple of recent solar punk anthologies. So until then, check the description below for how you can read these stories that I have reviewed today. And of course, if you enjoyed watching, please leave a like, share the video far and wide with all of your SFF reading friends, and above all, please subscribe if you have not done so. That is how the channel grows. You can also support the channel at my TeePublic store and at my Patreon, where recruits into Wink's Army get little perks like getting to see some of these videos early. I want to thank all of those folks for their additional support. I want to thank you guys for being the most awesome viewers on BookTube. And until I see you all next time, happy reading.